Welcome to The Record Show, your virtual spin around the vinyl industry. Brought to you by Radio Wasteland Records. Yes, Midland has a record store. Here's your host, Jim Gleason.
Greetings from the Wasteland and welcome to another edition of The Record Show. And what a show we've got for you today. Before we get into that though, I'd like to very humbly ask all of you who are new to the channel, or maybe those of you who've been watching but haven't yet done so, please hit that subscribe button and make sure to leave us a comment on this or any of our other videos. We'd love to hear from you. Well, coming up today, we will check in once again with Ken Norton from Ingram Entertainment, taking a look at all of the upcoming releases headed to an indie record store near you. We'll take a closer look at a couple of very classic albums, not new ones, but older versions. And we'll go hometown Detroit in a spin from the Wasteland. But before we get to any of that on the Record Show, we have a very, very special guest we'd like to bring on board. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Mr. Alice Cooper. Alice, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm a Michigander. You know that.
On a scale of, oh, hell no, to are you freaking kidding me, how much do you miss the snow here?
You know, I'll tell you what. I lived there till I was 10 years old. And the greatest thing in the world was the first snow. You know, when you're a kid, that's nothing better than that. Because, you know, Christmas is going to be snowy and the hockey season is starting and you're going to be able to throw snowballs and you're going to be able, you know, snow was great. It was great. Now it's sort of, if I want snow, I can go 2 hours north to Flagstaff.
There you go, up into the mountains.
And then leave and get back to the sun.
Or we're kind of stuck here with it.
Yeah, you know, we a lot of times we don't tour in the wintertime because it's a little more dangerous when you're busing. All the you know, you have 8 buses, 10 buses, and you've got ice on the road. That's always a little bit more frightening. So we try to tour, you know, fall, spring, and summer.
It's good to know you're still kicking it old school that way too, though.
Oh yeah.
So, no. Well, the reason we've got you today is that you have got a brand new album coming to stores everywhere on February 26th, and it's called Detroit Stories. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what's with the title and what's with the music on this one?
Well, I think it's my 28th or 29th studio album. And what I wanted to do was, we were originally with Bob Ezra, and I said, let's write a really good hard rock album, just a really, where every single song is radio, you know, I mean, it can be so let's write 12 or 13 of those little gems. And then we thought about, well, hard rock, why don't we go to the home of hard rock, Detroit? And there was really no concept in this project. And then we said, let's go to Detroit. Let's write the album in Detroit. Let's record it there and use all Detroit players. Well, then it became now a concept. Because I said, cool. Well, yeah, I said, because Detroit's the home of hard rock. Let's explore Detroit. Let's find punk bands. Let's use a little bit of Motown. Let's go bluesy. Let's go this, but let's make it a guitar-driven hard rock album.
You know, and there is a lot of Detroit in this, in the music as well, right down to the fact that there's a couple of covers in addition to the original music on this, including that old Seeger one that showed up on Breadcrumbs.
That's right. I was from the East Detroit. So, you know, that fit right into it. I think he was a little bit surprised when we decided to do, like, he said, what song are you going to do? I think he probably thought we were going to do Hollywood Nights or one of those, or Get Out of Denver or something like that. And I'm going, no, we're going to do East Side Story. And that kind of like took him back a foot. And he went, what?
That's such a great song, though, too. But so the singles that you're kicking out in this already, Our Love Will Change the World, and of course the Detroit 2020. Yeah. Is there any kind of meaning behind the Detroit and that year 2020 that means so much to so many people?
Well, that's a bit of a history lesson on that one. You know, I mean, we came to Detroit from LA, and we didn't fit in LA. We didn't fit in San Francisco. We didn't fit in New York. We fit in Detroit. Because when we finally realized who the Stooges were and the MC5 and Susie Quattro, all these bands we felt right at home in the hard rock world. We didn't feel at home in the soft rock LA or the country rock San Francisco. You know, Detroit was where we belonged. And then when they found out I was from Detroit, well, we were like the finger that was missing in the glove. you know.
It's kind of cool.
And we felt, I mean, to us, that audience was made for an Alice Cooper show. They were young. They wanted the band in their face, and they wanted these songs to be aggressive, you know.
You know what's kind of cool is the fact that around the country, different areas geographically are known for certain types of music. You got Chicago blues, you've got Southern California surf. Into the 90s, you've got grunge from the Seattle area. But Michigan, we're lucky enough to have two big genres between Motown and this hard rock stuff that you're talking here as well.
Oh, yeah. And the funny thing is that both of them lived together very well. Back in the day in 1970, we'd play the Grandee Theater with the Stooges and the MC5 and the Who. And we'd look down and there'd be Smokey Robinson. And there'd be one of the Supremes, and there'd be two of the Temptations, because the Motown bands, they loved the energy of the hard rock shows. And to us, it was just music. There was no color thing involved in it. Nobody thought, oh, that's black music and this is white music. It was just music. We would just go down the Rooster Trail. Yeah, we'd go down the Rooster Trail and see, George Clinton, and, all the bands from the soul bands and to us, it was just normal. So all the Motown bands and the rock bands were very much close together like that.
Now, the new album, as the Detroit flavors we have coming through this, the vinyl especially, and we're here a record store, your stuff always sells really well here at our store, no matter whether it's old or whether it's new. This particular one, I think there's even an indie exclusive version. So us little guys, thank you very much for that, for giving us a little bit, I don't want to say breadcrumbs, but for giving us a good one to draw the folks in. But this is going to be a big one for you. Can you feel that in your bones here?
Yeah, I think so, only because it's a really specific album. I don't think that anybody out of Detroit won't like it. I think because it really rocks. The whole album rocks. I mean, you got Joe Bonamassa and Steve Hunter playing on a bunch of the songs together. You got Wayne Kramer. You've got Johnny B on drums and Mark Farner on guitar. I mean, a lot of just Detroit flavor all over this album. And it's got a sense of humor, certainly. And I just got tired of Detroit being sort of the butt of the joke. I mean, I only lived there for 10 years when I was a little boy and then came back there in the 70s. But when people say, where are you from? I've been in Arizona for 50 years. And I go, I'm from Detroit.
There you go. I'm
a Michigander.
Now, right down to the core. And we love that and appreciate that about you.
Well, that's to me, I'm proud of that. I mean, in the music world, if you say you're from Detroit, you get a different respect. You really do.
Well, cool. Now, real quickly before you go, I mentioned that your albums sell well here, not just here, but in record stores all over the place, in Michigan especially. But your older records especially, they have a certain collectibility with them because, for lack of a better term, I'll use the word gimmicky in some cases, but whether the covers had little flaps or folds or inserts that went in, things along the lines, if you don't mind, I'll call one up here. We got something like $1 Billion Babies that came with the $1 Billion bill.
Absolutely. I mean,
too. And then most famously, School's Out. And it came, and yes, I do have a pair of these.
Oh, those are very collectible.
Now, you very much so. But at the time, I'm sure you weren't thinking, hey, let's come up with something that's going to have some intrinsic value way down the line for collectors. No, I don't think that was the case, was it?
At the time, it was Warner Brothers gave up on designing our packaging. And they finally just said, you guys know how to sell yourself better than we do. You have to remember, 3 of us in the band were art majors. And so they would show us a cover and we'd go, no. And then we would show them a school desk that opened up and there were panties inside. And they went, yeah, okay, that's really good. And then $1 Billion Babies. Well, of course, it's going to be a wallet, a snakeskin wallet. When you open it up, there's a $1 billion bill in there. Back then, you could do all that because the record companies knew you were going to sell 3 or 4 million records. So they could afford to do that. It's a little harder now, even though vinyl, I think, is went up 85% last year.
Kicking way up there. Yep.
People are buying vinyl again, and that gives you more of a chance. But we kind of injected our art and our sense of humor into our packaging. And we basically found guys, in the business, Pacific Ioneer, who had as dark a sense of humor as we did.
Well, cool. Well, I very much appreciate you taking the time today. And for those that are curious, we do have that. It's a February 26th release date for the Detroit Stories, your brand new album. Anything else you want to say to the folks here in Michigan or out there, your fans waiting patiently for this one?
I'm very curious about everybody's opinion of Stafford for Goff.
Okay. Well, we'll see where that takes everybody.
Yeah, I think it's a good trade. I do. I love Stafford, but I think Goff is really, if you're a Detroiter, you're into music and you're also into sports. Because I'm a diehard Tiger fan, diehard Lions fan, Big Blue, all those things are still diehard with me. And, I know it's really hard to be a fan sometimes.
Yep.
I have a shirt that said Lions 0-14, believe in futility.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, Alice, thank you again very much. Best of luck with this new release. We're going to do everything we can on our end to punch it out to your fans. And I know record stores everywhere will be doing the same.
Well, thanks a lot. And hopefully we'll be on tour by August or September. So
hopefully you guys stay safe and stay healthy, please.
Everybody get out there and get you vaccinated, okay? So we can go on tour.
Sounds great. Thanks again, Alice.
Okay, man. Bye-bye.
It's time once again on the Record Show to get caught up on all of the new releases headed to an indie record store near you. We are joined once again by our friend Ken Norton from Ingram Entertainment. Ken, how are you today?
Doing great, Jim. How you doing?
Good. Now it's it's sort of a quiet week, but there is some big stuff on the horizon that we'll get to in just a moment or two, including, as you had seen, we talked with Alicecooper about his big one, and we've got some more information on the variations of that coming up. But first, this week, there's a few cool things coming out, aren't there?
There are. There's definitely some things worth mentioning this week. I'll start with the Indy Lou Harris reissue of Red Dirt Girl on red vinyl, two LPs, and that's one of her staple records. I'm sure that the fans have been waiting for this particular issue, so that's coming out this week. You've got a David Coverdale White Snake reissue. It's remastered on the limited run. The album called White Snake, and from early in his career. And there's a Neil Young record called The Times. This one was called from his porch sessions, the stuff that he's been doing from during lockdown, or fireside sessions. They call them fireside sessions series, and the porch session episode is one of the sessions, and that's what you're looking at here, like acoustic sort of in-home versions of stuff like Ohio and Southern Man and Dylan's Times They Are Changing. So Neil Young fans are going to be interested in that.
That's cool. They got to keep busy themselves too during the lockdowns, I would assume. So, and then I'm looking ahead. Those are all cool, by the way, but looking ahead, some notes I've made of things to kind of keep our eye out for. There's a Willie Nelson coming out on the 26th where he is paying tribute to Frank Sinatra, I see.
Sinatra, yeah.
Yep, called That's Life. Yep, so we'll get through there. And then further down the line into March, we've talked in April about the Greta Van Fleet. We'll save that one for a future day because that's going to be a biggie, I think, on our end too. But into March, I'm seeing something from Lana Del Rey, and I'm getting some requests already, and I think some folks are as well, for a Chris Cornell, No One Sings Like You Anymore. Looks like that's on March 19th.
Yes.
So cool things to watch out for.
Absolutely.
So,
left out on to this week, and that's the Bon Jovi 2020. The CD came out last year, but now finally on vinyl, and it's a double gold vinyl, 180 gram.
I did forget about that, and I know because I've had a couple of people asking about that. Thank you for bringing that back up. So, and this is all new Bon Jovi stuff, correct?
It is. It is brand new stuff.
So there is a lot of great stuff coming down the pipe, but as we've been talking about all through the show today and talking with the Coop himself, the big one coming up on February 26th is the Alicecooper Detroit Stories. And there are a few different versions of that, correct?
Oh, correct. Absolutely. Indie vinyl, colored vinyl, red, regular black vinyl, the CD plus DVD, am I correct? I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the box set.
And the box set, from what I'm reading on, looks like it's going to list for $49.98. It's going to have the compact disc version of the album, a Blu-ray of a concert from 2017, a full performance of Paranormal live in Paris, something called a Torchlight. Any
Whatever.
who knows? 3 stickers and a T-shirt, and it looks like it says an extra large T-shirt only, which is good news for folks like me, but others it might be a night shirt. So there's, I think, what we can glean from that is that this release being a little bit out, February 26th on there still is a lot of time for folks to contact their local indie record store after they decide which version, or you know what, make us happy, multiple versions that you would like to get a hold of.
Yeah.
Do you see, are you seeing some demand for the Cooper coming in so far?
Absolutely. Seems to be definitely some demand for this. It's I think, an interesting return to his roots. So people, who love Cooper, early stuff is often amongst their favorite. So there's some draw to that. And of course the goodies, the packaging and all the, makes it fun. It really makes it fun when you've got more to look forward to than just popping it in.
And as we talked with Alice about earlier too, the packaging has been something that has been prevalent throughout his career, going back to some of these older albums where they had goodies kind of tucked in there, whether they be the panties or a bill or just some fun stuff with the album covers themselves. It's always been kind of a big thing for him and his releases. It's cool to see that happening again. Yeah,
it's creativity, really.
Okay, so still lots to look forward to, and we will catch up again next week, Ken, with you with hopefully a lot more goodies as the 2021 release year continues to unfold.
Indeed. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Ken. Have a good week.
Hey, you too.
Rather than delving into something new today, we thought it only fitting to take a closer look at the 2 albums we mentioned earlier in our talk with Alice Cooper, that being 1972's School's Out and 1973's $1 Billion Babies. Both of them are common albums, but they can also be very collectible depending upon their condition and whether or not you've got the goodies that were included with those original releases. Now, School's Out is known primarily for its title track and biggest hit, but it goes much deeper than that. Author Ian Chapman called this a concept album about youth lost when one leaves high school. And listening to this in total, you can kind of pick up on that theme throughout. Songs like Looney Tune, My Stars, Public Animal No. 9, and especially Alma Mater is about leaving that nest and moving on. But often missed in this album is its not so subtle homage to both the stage play and film West Side Story, especially prevalent in the tracks Gutter Cats versus the Jets.
Here come the Jets like a bat out of hell. Someone gets in our way, someone don't feel so well. When you're a Jet, you stay a Jet.
Now, as Alice mentioned earlier, this album has sold millions and millions of copies and has been reissued countless times as well. But original pressings can be identified by both looking at the label, their green label Warners from 1972, 73-ish, but also by the design that Alice mentioned. The cover is a school desk that opens. It's got a fold on the top, but opens to reveal, and the album would sit inside there. The back side of this also has a couple of cardboard folds that come out to make the album shape like a school desk that opens. Now that's a great concept for album art and all, but given the fact that this predates very common use of poly sleeves, that left this album cover very, very vulnerable to damage as it was hauled back and forth to parties and put on and off record shelves throughout the 70s and 80s. So as such, rarely do I see original copies of this album come in where there's not much damage to those flaps or the top as well. It's something that just takes a beating over time. But aside from the condition of the vinyl and the cover, more importantly for the collectability of School's Out is whether or not it contains the original insert, that being a pair of panties. Now originally School's Out came with either a white, or sometimes a blue, or a pink pair of panties. They were all made of paper, so the fact that they've lasted almost 50 years makes them extremely rare. Added to the fact that these were made of paper, they tend to disintegrate rather easily if exposed over time. Now, early pressings are the only ones that came with the panties. Because they're made of paper, they were deemed to be flammable and therefore discontinued after that first year's run. So again, if you can find an early copy of School's Out that still has the panties, that makes it a very rare find. It was only a year after the success of School's Out that Alice Cooper released Billion Dollar Babies in 1973, and arguably this album had more hits on it than School's Out. Things like the title track, Billion Dollar Babies, Elected, and the biggie, No More Mr. Nice Guy. But physically speaking, the album itself was just as cool. It was designed to look like a snakeskin wallet that, when opened, contained a $1 billion bill. And like School's Out, the cover had some neat things going on, but also made it vulnerable to damage in the long run. On the inside of the gatefold was a die-cut money clip that held onto the $1 billion bill, and it's very rare to see these things not torn completely off. But on the other side of the gatefold was a set of perforated cards built into the cardboard. And many times folks would take these out to collect them, post them, trade them, do whatever. But again, finding them intact makes this a very cool collectible to have. As far as the value of early pressings of School's Out and Billion Dollar Babies go, it really depends on the condition of both the vinyl and the covers, whether or not there's rips or tears. But it also depends a great deal on whether or not they contain the original inserts. I've seen copies of School's Out with the panties listed for anywhere between $50 to $100. And Billion Dollar Babies could go anywhere between $20 and $50 depending upon the jacket condition and whether or not the bill is included. Either way, both of these albums are essential for any Alice Cooper fan to have in their collection. And finally today, we're going to stick with that Detroit theme as we hear another spin from the Wasteland. And for that, we're going back to the early 1980s. A little history beforehand, though. In 1948, a radio station went on the air in Detroit with the call letters of WXYZ, and they served the Detroit area proudly for many, many decades. But 50 years ago, February 14th to be exact, in 1971, that station changed its call signs to WRIF, and a rock legend in Detroit was born. Now, I grew up in the mid-Michigan area, about halfway between Detroit and Lansing, in a little farming town named Fowlerville. So I was able to pick up stations from both of those areas. Detroit was a little tougher, and I had to do some interesting rigging with copper wire to pick up the Detroit stations. But when I did, I listened to WRIF. And that was a great, great experience growing up as a kid, listening to all of that great music. One of the staples of the station from 1979 through 1986 was JJ and the Morning Crew, kind of setting the standards for morning radio shows from that era. They were at the top of their game. Jim Johnson and George Baird and a host of others played the music that Detroit loved to hear. They did parodies as well as news, sports, and weather. They were biggies in Detroit radio. Well, in 1984, they took that level of parody making to the next step and released an album called Meet the Bruiser Band. Now, the Bruiser, George Baird's alter ego, was Dick the Bruiser, was actually a professional wrestler at the time. I think it was Big Time Wrestling or something along those names. And that's actually Dick the Bruiser, the wrestler, on the cover. But on the back, you see that it's actually George Baird doing all of the vocals, Jim Johnson doing all the vocals, and a host of others, both Detroit musicians and other radio station personalities helping them out. You may even notice on this that playing drums and producing this album is a guy by the name of Tom Dalden. And that's a name that you might recognize as the Tom Dalden, who's a producer and host of the popular PBS television show Under the Radar, Michigan. This album, by the way, is the group Domino, of which Dalden was also a part of back in 1985. Now, I've had the Meet the Bruiser Band album in my record collection since 1984. Chances are I bought it at Wazoo in Ann Arbor or something along those lines, but it's a cool album to have, and I picked it up because I was a fan of the morning show. There are a lot of cool parody songs on here. Everything from the Stray Cats to the Police to Gary Newman and Quiet Riot. But their biggest hit off this album was a parody of Question Mark and the Mysterians called 96 Beers, Catch a Good High.
And we'll get blasted right down here when we start drinking 96 beers. We're gonna drink 96 beers. We're gonna drink. When the sun comes up, we'll throw up and wish we hadn't drank so much.
Your chances of finding an original copy of this are probably better at record stores in and around the Detroit area, although they do tend to show up elsewhere. This one popped up at our store in Midland. Couldn't be happier because now I get to play mine in the store.
Here at the bar, I feel safe as the mall. I get drunk as a skunk and throw up on the walls in bars. Mix me a drink in a 14-ounce glass. I'll drink it down in one gulp and get knocked on my ass in bars.
Thanks again for watching The Record Show. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to the Radio Wasteland YouTube channel and be sure to leave comments on our videos. We'd love to hear from you.